Hi everybody, welcome to TIA Now. I'm Clarence Reynolds. When ultra-broadband communications combine with intelligent building platforms and then integrate with 5G, smart buildings will become the foundation that enables the creation of smart communities. So what's next for smart building development? Well, we're joined by John Ricci, VP of Corporate Development at Next Edge Networks, and John Foley, General Manager of the Safer Buildings Coalition. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
So the first question, of course, is what is a smart building? What makes a smart building? John, you can answer.
Which John?
Either
John,
one.
you go first.
Sure. I guess in my view, and how do you determine how smart that smart building is essential in that question as well. There are a number of kind of evaluation criteria that we want to look at and we want to attempt to quantify and measure. And I think we want to look at those criteria almost in a scoring type of way to understand how that building stacks. If you know, to be able to use that data in a way that allows, you know, owners to market based on it and other things of that nature. So, and tenants to evaluate it, right? So those evaluation criteria, I think, as I see it, are, you know, you start at connectivity. Both wired and wireless connectivity is essential as one of those criteria. Next, there's sensing. There's not just sensors that kind of, you know, go on and off for HVAC and lighting as people enter the room or leave the room, but ones that use the data that they collect, and they use analytics around that, and from that, really the building begins to learn from that data collection. Another component is resiliency and the ability to kind of bounce back. That is a metric that we need to look at. I would say beyond that, there's I would say no building, and I know that I'm going to save this one for John. I'm going to say public safety is essential, and really the next one is user experience and usability and productivity of workers, comfort of workers and residents and guests, and how do we do that in an efficient way? And then to put a kind of a bow on all of it, how do we tie that all together and integrate all of those different moving parts? And that's really with a kind of a full functionality building management system that integrates all those together would be my answer.
I think that's a great bottom-up answer. You know, from the top down, a smart building should result in ideal outcomes. And what might an ideal outcome be? From a public safety standpoint, it's that everyone is safe, that the occupants are safe, and that first responders who show up can remain in communication and deliver the service, and everybody goes home safe. That's the ideal outcome. In a school, it could be that a student who's struggling is identified quickly and resources are brought to them quickly. From a security standpoint, is that the bad guys are kept out, or that if a bad guy gets in, that we find them quickly. So what that takes is infrastructure. There are common elements to it. You know, it starts at the most basic bone level, which is pathway and fiber and power and space. But then up from there, you have to have great interoperability, access to all that data, and then something that takes all that data, sifts through it, and arrives at the best choices for someone to decide what to do next. That bridges so many topics, everything from technology to connectivity to cybersecurity and privacy laws. So this is not a small subject, this is a huge subject.
Would it ultimately be easier to build a smart building from the ground up, or will it be easier to retrofit an existing building with all of those things you just described?
No, starting from scratch is always easier.
Okay.
But regardless of whether you have a greenfield building, a new building, or a brownfield building, an existing building, it starts with a plan. You have to know where you're starting from, what the objectives are. It's always less expensive to put infrastructure in place before the walls go up, before the ceilings go in, and the floors are cast, or maybe the walls are covered with millions of dollars of expensive decorative marble. That is not the time you want to start carving the walls up. So early on is the right place to start if you can.
And I would say that the other part that John mentions, he starts to speak about the kind of the future readiness of the system itself, whether it's retroed in or it's a greenfield. You have to dimension for it. You don't want to open up ceilings multiple times. You want to smartly manage that riser. You want to dimension for what we believe to be kind of the evolution of 4G to 5G and support those kind of next technologies with minimal disruption to the tenants.
What role will municipalities play in making a building smart and keeping it safe? Because that seems like the community is part of the building at that point. Is that a role the municipalities will play?
Sure. Right now, smart cities is where municipalities play, and that's one kind of governing agency. But there are others too. There's county, there's state, and there's federal too. So at the smart city level, you'll see things that are happening that both make a city more livable and to attract more residents in. Cities like Orlando and Atlanta are great examples, but it's also about operational efficiency. You might have seen big belly trash cans spread around a city. Well, they do a couple of things. They a lot of times they're Wi-Fi hotspots, but they also phone home and say when they're full. So instead of the trash truck stopping at every single trash can along the way, it only stops at the ones that are full. That saves on fuel, it decreases traffic congestion. So if you take that same thinking and apply it to buildings, buildings are going to be designed completely different in the future. Right now, 30% of the real estate space in an urban environment is used for parking cars. As we move into autonomous vehicles, we're going to be redesigning buildings to need fewer garage spaces, for example. So that's going to change the infrastructure needs. At the baseline of it, you have common infrastructure. So what is the role of the city today? Mostly it is through fire and building codes that are requiring great communication systems and that are causing the building developers to spend money on that infrastructure. So while that regime is in place, while there's a reason for them to have their checkbook out, what incrementally could they put on top of that investment to add other smart capabilities? And I'm sure John has some ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I would completely agree with all of that. I would further say that I think there's another role that they play. The cities, the municipalities, beyond kind of the coding and the jurisdictional kind of responsibility. I think they, because of this urban densification, because of people moving to that urban environment to live, to work, the smart buildings are so critical to the smart city ecosystem. So I think the role that municipalities can also play is I think they have the influence to kind of create that public awareness and turn that into kind of demand, and in which case will kind of entice the building owners to participate in that ecosystem. And I think the utilities, which many times are municipalities, are really going to be the ones to justify that business reason or purpose for smart buildings to kind of move into that ecosystem and support kind of the overall goals of smart cities. I think the overall goal is, you want to monitor so that for the purpose of measuring, so that you can dynamically kind of use that information, and you have to kind of use resources wisely. So we all have to work together as the kind of the population in the urban areas grow.
As you move into smart buildings being integrated into a smart community, and even in the building itself, what are the issues with interoperability that start to become barriers to deployment?
So interoperability really is about the edge points or the demarcations between one system and another. If there are standard interfaces, it's easy to connect them together, and then bring that information all together that can be used for an ideal outcome. A lot of times those interfaces are not defined yet. So you have good old technology like wires that are well defined in the TIA standards and BICSI standards and so forth and so on. On the wireless side you have 3GPP, but now you have new technologies that are emerging. CBRS is an emerging technology. We haven't really discovered how to get these systems to talk to each other yet. Even RF over fiber, CPRI is not really a standard, it's a specification. So how these things all talk together, it's really the edge points that need to be defined better. And then the other kind of standards that are needed are those that have to do with privacy. There's an awful lot of data that's made available in a smart city and a smart building that could be leveraged for an ideal outcome. It could be leveraged for a bad outcome too. So we have a lot of work to do, and not just on the technical side, but on the ethical and the philosophical side.
So I think we are seeing, convergence between the operating technology systems and information technology systems. It is happening. I think I would say that we're not quite there yet, and there's some nice band-aids in place with some over-the-top on top of the building management systems that are kind of helping us in some respects. But in order for us to, there needs to be that seamless communication. There needs to be the operating technologies kind of speaking in web-based speak or in the open kind of protocol in order for us to really get the full benefits of IoT and what we have down the road. So I think it's going to happen. It's happening. It's just probably a little bit more clunky than we'd like at the moment.
Well, thank you very much for being with us. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
And of course, we'd like to hear from you, so reach out to us on Facebook or Twitter, and you can see more videos at tianow.org and on our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.